6 weeks or so from the county championship, and obviously this year a little bit different from previous years. It's being played in blocks and everyone's got a different view on what the best schedule is. You're not going to please everyone, but from a coach's perspective, having those blocks where you can focus on the specific tournament, it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
From a playing point of view, it's a great thing, yeah, and from a coaching point of view, it's a great thing. I know guest members aren't particularly thrilled about it through various chunks of the season where they're not going to see much county cricket. But in the recent 3 or 4 years, it's been tough. I think it's been really tough on players, unrealistic on players to be able to perform at their best with a real mishmash of fixtures coming at you from all angles. You know, huge blocks of 18, 19 days in a row. You know, switching from 50 over to championship to 2020 back to championship. There's no time for rest. There's no time to really prepare properly. Players feel they have to keep coming in and practice the next format, which is a day away. So there's no real rest. It's crazy, and actually, for a coach, we expect the best out of those guys day in, day out. And actually, it's unrealistic. There's no way you can do it. There's no way they can do it. So what this does allow is that you can prepare very specifically for a block of fixtures. So obviously, in this case, championship, 3 games up front. We can prepare very specifically for that with a bit of rest in between, and the 50 overs the same. You've got time off in between the games. You're in that competition, and that's what you're practicing for the period of the competition. And then there's not a rush to get everything done. So it gives us a very clear outline of where we want to be during the course of the season. The 2020 block is a long block, admittedly, but again, you're in the competition. You're playing 2020 cricket for a month, 2 months. Right, this is what we're at, and I think you'll see a better standard. I think you'll see players not flagging, fatigued. It will produce better cricket, I'm sure. And looking at the schedule, there's more time to rest. I think the English county season is brutal. You know, we're not going to moan about it because we love doing it, and we get paid for playing cricket, and it's fantastic. But at the same time, there's a lot of cricket going on, and if players aren't rested well, there's injuries that come along that you don't really need, and there's also people playing that are not mentally or physically right.
And as a spectacle, the county championship presumably will benefit from not having the confusion between the 20 over and the 4-day games, because they're very different skills, particularly from a batting and even bowling perspective in terms of the mindset and the tactics.
Absolutely, it's not just us. All counties have been involved in it. I'm not bemoaning our schedule. Everyone's in it, and everyone has that same challenge. But yeah, it is. It's a technical alteration you have to make. There's a physical alteration you have to make. And certainly a psychological alteration you have to make, going from a 4-day, battling, gruelling 4 days of county cricket into fast-paced, high-energy, dynamic 2020 cricket. It's not that easy to do when you're just going, one to the other. People need a bit of time to get into that, and some people adjust brilliantly, and others need a bit more time. And look, it's something we've had to deal with, and people have done it very well. But I think what you'll see now is a fresher cricketer and a cricketer that's able to really focus on that particular skill and particular format over those periods of the competition.
In terms of selection, because obviously that's something you're going to have more and more say in as head coach, specialist teams, it's always the question of the time of year is which competition you're going to focus on, and the answer is, well, all of them, and you can this year in that. But in terms of where we are as a club, we're very close to promotion in the 4-day format, another quarter-final in 1 day, and just short on T20. That's something you've addressed in the pre-season, hasn't it, with the kind of skills you've been working on with the players?
Absolutely. If you asked any county coach this time of year what's your objective, it would be to be competitive across all formats and win everything. Win every game of cricket you play, and that's unrealistic. But you want to set out, and when you've got a group of players that are multi-talented across all formats, it's very hard to pinpoint what you feel is priority. I mean, probably, if we're honest, the priority is to get up to Division 1. That is where every county wants to be, and there's a gulf now, it seems, certainly in the eyes and mind, I think, of selectors, and there's a perception that there's a gap, and Division 2 is inferior, which I completely, I can't have that, players can be ignored from Division 2 cricket, because there are still very, very good cricketers playing in Division 2. All right, there's probably the stronger teams will always be in Div 1, and there probably is a high level of consistent skill in Division 1, but that's not to say there isn't really good cricket in Division 2. But I think all our players want to play Division 1, they want to test themselves at the highest level. Understandably, I want to test myself at that level. We all do. So Division 1 is really key for us this year. We were close last year, it didn't happen. But saying that, I feel we got a really good chance in T20 and 50 over cricket. We have the skills to be able to really push that. We have done over the last couple of seasons. We've threatened, we've been close in 2020 and 50 over, so we're not going to ignore those, absolutely. And I think you're right, Tom. There is a chance now to be able to be very sort of clear and specific about each format and give ourselves the best chance to really attack it properly, rather than it's all mishmashed in together and you don't know whether you're coming and going and you sort of just roll with it. So here we can be very clear cut, very sort of specific, and very concentrated on each format when it comes along.
And players want to play in all games. There's an example last year, Mitch Clayton didn't play much 4-day cricket a couple of years ago, got himself back into the fold and was a key player in the team. Will there be a case of certain players having to fight that kind of being pigeonholed as a white ball or red ball cricketer, or in terms of their skill set? Not
by me. Look, people will have different strengths. Absolutely, I think you always might suit one format, but I think as a young cricketer, you would want to play every format. And I think I would never tell a player that you're just a white ball specific or a red ball specific. You want to be playing across all formats. Absolutely. Now, as I say, you might be stronger in this area as opposed to that, and these areas you need to work on to up your skills in various formats. But the challenge for these guys is to really push on all fronts. And you want Alex Blake, T20 specialist, to become a 4-day consistent player who's going to score hundreds of runs. And Sean Dixon, who's up the front in our 4-day team, opening the batting, to really push his case for 1-day cricket and keep challenging those areas for their development. I know in the winter we had a brilliant pre-Christmas schedule we put in place, which allowed those guys to really challenge themselves in those areas of needed improvement.
And what specific things is it for the supporters? What things have you looked at and said, well, we're a little bit behind on this, fielding, batting, bowling? What kind of skills do they need in particularly the shorter format? I know that's something you talked about a lot with the guys after last year.
Yeah, look, it's very individual with each player, and when people think about white ball cricket, people tend to think about hitting the ball out of the park, and that is a big part of it these days. So a lot of practice on range hitting. And not just slogging, it's making sure you're very clear in those areas of your boundary options, and executing them over and over and over again. And look, the best players will hit the ball 360 nowadays. In cricket, we've got one of them in Sam Billings in our own ranks. But to really nail your areas and be very confident when you need a boundary. So a lot of work on making sure those guys can find the ropes when needed in different areas. For bowlers, it's working on your depth skill, working on your variations, still making sure you can hit an area and having that confidence to be able to do it over and over again. And really important nowadays in this modern age of white ball cricket, that you've got to come up with some skills or outthink the batter, because the batters are improving at a rate of knots, so the bowlers have got to catch up. So a lot of work on those guys. I mean, back to the batting, not just whacking it out of the park, but working on your sweeping, reverse sweeping, your little trick shots, able to manipulate the ball off the spin, making sure you're always looking to score, trying not to let the spinner settle, and having that confidence in your game, knowing exactly how you're going to go about attacking a T20 game or 50 over game. So that was a big part of the winter, but also red ball stuff as well, stretching the practice, stretching the intensity in the practice, making them feel under pressure, trusting their defence, improving their defences, working on short pitch, but across all.
How tricky is that from a coach? Obviously, this time of year, you're getting towards the business end now, where you've got county championship in your sights. It's 5-6 weeks away. The lads have got that first fixture targeted now, April the 7th. But in November, December, you can do a lot. You can deconstruct people's techniques a little bit more, build them back up, and then, like you said, for the tour, you've got a bit of time to work on things. But as you come close to the season, that must be a challenge, I suppose, as a coach, to compartmentalise those skills so they're not trying to smack it out of the park when it's 200 for 5 and they want to get the 400 runs on the board. Absolutely.
I mean, the first part of the winter is very much that. You know, any issues we deal with technically, there's time to be able to deal with that. As I say, we did a very different setup this year, a lot more group practices, very themed, very structured. This was the message for the session, off we go. And they're playing under pressure quite a lot of the time, trying to make it as competitive as possible, rather than just coming in for a few throws and just making sure you're feeling good about your batting. It's trying to raise that level of toughness and competitiveness in indoor school, which is not easy, and actually, you know, there's only so much you can do in indoor school before it starts becoming mundane and, you know, drive you up the wall really with the same old. So look, now it actually worked out pretty well, because we highlight, you know, before we came away, we did a bit more white ball stuff indoors, and then we've had this competition, and every practice was around white ball. Obviously, this last couple of weeks or last week or so has been red ball stuff. We'll go back, everything will be red ball, but not ignoring the white ball skills as well. So during pre-season, we might feel we need a bit of a change up and have a white ball practice. The bowlers continually making sure they're addressing their white ball skills. Excuse me, making sure that, you know, variations, the Yorkers are still being dealt with and practiced. Range practice for the guys, ranging in practice. So you've got to get the balance right, and we know we've got 3 championship games up front, so that will be the main focus, but not to ignore the white ball stuff as well.